name is Dave Rensin. I am an engineering director at Google. I do work in Google's site reliability engineering organization, running a team called SRE, Customer Reliability Engineering. And yes, the topic of my talk is do this or fail, seriously. I'm an engineer, so what's the word? I'm going to be blunt and try to be fairly data-driven. Two, I don't expect everyone to agree with all the things I'm going to say. I've left, I hope, considerable time in our hour for Q&A. Ask me hard questions, please. Challenge me. It's entirely plausible that I'm wrong in some critical way. So I would like to discover that before I continue to be wrong more in the world. So let me just level set here. How many of you have heard of SRE, Site Reliability Engineering? Show of hands. Ooh, that's a pretty good show of hands. I will keep the hands up if you've heard of it. Hold on, we're going to whittle this down a little bit. How many of you own a copy of the SRE book? Ooh. All right then, fine. Now I know where I'm starting from. Cool. All right, tiny bit of history and then we'll get into this. In the usual world that we're all used to, we have developers and we have operations, right? And they fight like this. And the big problem is because, you know, operations people like to sleep. We don't like to be paged at 3 in the morning. We enjoy 8 hours of sleep. And developers like to ship features. So if it were up to the developers, they'd just ship, 20 features a day because that's, as software engineers, that's what we like to do. We like to ship shiny new features. It's how we get promoted and recognized and do good stuff in the world. That's why we became software engineers. As operations people, we like to sleep. So if it were up to us, once the system was stable, they would never change, ever, in the history of all time. The problem is that business requirements do change, and you add users, and features do change, and so there is a tension. And it winds up creating a lot of friction. And I mean that in the Newtonian classic sense. That release velocity eventually slows to asymptotically 0. Because the ops team will put new QA requirements in front of the developers, and the developers will find clever ways to recategorize. No, this isn't a new feature, it's a flag flip or a config push or something, and there's a lot of fighting. And the big challenge with conventional operations is that you have to scale the humans with the complexity of the system. So if your system is successful, if you're gaining lots and lots of users and you're adding lots and lots of features, you have this Cartesian explosion of the number of people you need to operate it. And that's bad. It's just not good business if you can avoid it. You wind up getting into a position where I like to say where you are working for the machines, right? The machine becomes unhealthy, it pages you at 3 in the morning. And what you want is to live in a world where the machine works for you. So that's just a tiny little bit of background. So SRE, Site Reliability Engineering, is what happened at Google when we decided we were going to stop doing conventional operations. That we were going to hire software developers to write software to do all of our operations. We weren't going to hire traditional sort of Linux administrators or network administrators anymore. Everyone we hired had to either have a background in or be capable of learning to write computer software. It was a decision we made. And so we like to say that SRE is what you get when you ask a software engineer to design operations. All right, well, CRE, Customer Reliability Engineering, is what you get when you ask SREs to talk to customers. This is very hard. We go through a rigorous screening process for my team where we go and talk to all the SREs and find the ones with the genetic mutation of can talk to human. Because as you know, when you hire technical people, what you're optimizing for is can talk to computer. But oddly enough, there are a few of them. And the way it started was pretty simple. I used to run support at Google for cloud. And you discover some basic truths. Truth number 1, the most important feature of any system is its reliability. I can prove that. If it isn't reliable, your users won't trust it. If they don't trust it, they won't use it. If they don't use it, it has actually no value in the world, right? Because the system is only as valuable as the number of users who use it. There's no such thing as a super valuable system that no one uses. It doesn't exist. So reliability is the most important feature, okay? When you are selling a platform, Like, so I work in cloud, so Google Cloud is a platform. That is to say, it is a system upon which our customers themselves engineer other systems. When you sell a platform, the reliability they experience is the product of two things. The reliability our engineers, our SREs, put into our platform, you know, how many nines is it getting? And the inherent reliability in the design and operation of the thing the customer brings to the platform. You bring a 2.9 system to a 5.9 platform, you will get slightly less than 2 nines. And you will be grumpy. This struck me one day after I've been running support for a while when I realized that in all the hundreds for sure and possibly thousands of conversations I'd had with customers, I never had one conversation that went this way. Hi, Google, this is a customer. We had a thing that it's been working for a while and we haven't changed anything and it's not really working as well anymore. We think you have a problem. Well, hi, customer. We're looking at our logs and we're looking at our monitoring and everything looks fine to us. Oh, well, okay, never mind. Literally has never happened. So, you know, it's the customer's perception, how their experience of the reliability of your system that matters. Because if they don't experience the reliability, it doesn't matter what your logs say, what your monitoring says. They don't trust it, they won't use it, it's worth nothing. I've worked in other companies, some other cloud companies too, I won't name them. Here's the thing I've come to discover. The industry is good at teaching people how to build for cloud and design for cloud and come to cloud. The industry is awful at teaching people how to live in cloud. And guess what? You will live with your choice much longer than it will take you to make your choice. The analogy I like to use is it's all well and good to teach someone how to build a really good boat, but it's fairly useless if you don't also teach them how to sail it. We have tried to build unsinkable ships in the past, and they have discovered icebergs. So that we needed to address this problem. So I was running support. I went to a guy named Ben Trainer, who invented SRE, runs all 24/7 operations at Google, to get his advice and said, Ben, I think we have this gap. I think we need to take, and he said, how do you want to solve this gap? I said, I think we need to take SREs, find the ones who want to talk to customers, more common than I thought it was going to be, which is great. And we have to go out into the world and teach our customers how to be more reliable and build reliable things and have generally experience better reliability. Because, you know, when your customers are yelling about your reliability, you have to slow down because you're spending time dealing with that instead of building features, and we don't like to slow down. So if we want to go faster, I have to teach the world how to be more, or at least our customers, how to be more reliable, and I want to do it with existing SREs because, you know, they're experts at how to run things at a large production scale. And he looked at me and he said, great, when are you going to go do that? I have a day job. He's like, well, now you have a new day job. Like, that was your old day job, but now you're going to have a new one. So that's how I came to do this. So this talk is, I want to talk about one concept. It's a deep topic, but I do want to talk about one concept that you can absolutely apply in a lot of places, even things that aren't technical, and we'll talk about how to do that, that if you embrace this one concept, you will go faster, you will be more reliable, it will be easier for you to resolve conflict between warring tribes, honest to God, I swear. I'm not a motivational speaker, I'm going to give you real data, and I'm not selling you anything either. Okay, so that sounds magical. Let's talk about that. All right, so let's start at the beginning. There is this popular belief in business. You see books about it all the time. You can go on Amazon and do a Google search or go into a bookstore if you can find one of those that says you should work on developing your gut and you should trust your gut. And you know, if you do the 10-second Google search, you can find all sorts of things that say you should do that, right? You can find doctors who will tell you that there's a chemical and a biological reason about your gut biome, or you can then, if you look a little further, like you can find articles about that. That's not just, you know, that mainstream. You can apply all this to mainstream business, and then you really know you've got a powerful idea, you know, when it starts to make it up the food chain into sort of the general business magazines, and then finally, when Malcolm Gladwell writes a book. When Malcolm, the notorious MTG, writes a book about an idea, you know it has reached critical mass. It is finally at meme stage in the world. The idea is you can trust your gut. And that is the most comforting advice I can think of. Because if I can just trust my gut, if humans are normally like pretty good at making instinctive decisions about things. I don't have to mess with process and data and documenting things. That's so awesome. I love that, right? There's a problem, though. It's a lie. It's not true. I can prove this. You can prove this. It's very simple. These experiments have actually been run. They go a little bit something like this. You find a decision, a thing that you can go one way, A or B. And then you gather in a room a group of people who seem like they should be in a position of information to make a gut instinct about this decision. I'm generalizing this because I don't want to use the names of the companies who ran these experiments. And you put them in the room. You give them the information. You tell them, use your intuition and decide which way to do. You expect two outcomes if you do this enough. You expect the overwhelming majority of people in the room to make the same gut call, right? If we all have guts we can mostly rely on, we should all make basically the same call, and you expect that call to be basically right. Except when they do it, they find about it's 50-50. So clearly this is not true. Well, all right. Oh, this is the other problem, is even if it were true, pretending for a moment, the other problem is it doesn't scale. So set aside the data and the experiments. I want you to imagine for a second you have a superpower. You have an awesome gut. You are the one person who can tell the difference between the sinking feeling about a bad decision and the sinking feeling about the bad sushi. That you can tell that difference. You're that person. Every decision you make based on your intuition turns out to be correct. You are a savant. That's awesome and amazing, and you will never sleep again in your entire life, because soon your business, which wants to expand and grow and gain more customers and more revenue, will discover you are the ultimate decision-making gut machine. You are the magic 8-ball. They will come to you, and you'll be in trouble. And you can't teach this to people because it's intuition, and it's biology, apparently, right, if we believe the earlier slides. And so it doesn't scale, and it makes you very valuable and very tired and very burned out. So we would prefer, actually, for that to not be true. My experience is I don't have a super reliable gut. I mean, I, like everyone else, I get intuitions and sort of the spidey sense, and sometimes they're right and probably sometimes they're wrong too. But I lose sleep if I find I'm making a decision based on my gut instinct. I really do try to get data. Not have to get all the data, but enough of it to figure out what's going on. So, okay, we can't just blindly trust our gut. That's mostly nonsense. How do we do it? Well, you won't be shocked to hear this. My background is in statistics. I work in Silicon Valley. I am an engineer. So, of course, I'm going to tell you have to use data, right? Everything's about data, 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 data. If you all have the right data, you can't help but make the right decision. Data, data, data. Yummy, yummy data. And in that same 10-second Google search about decision-making will tell you the same thing, right? Anybody can do data-driven decision-making. Look, it says so right there in Forbes, right? Oh, and if you're not a math major, don't sweat it. You can do it too. And you can use it for everything. Like, not only if you weren't a math major, pretend you didn't pay attention to math at all ever in your entire academic career, and you're doing, I don't know, let's say, marketing. You also can use data-driven decision-making. So it does. I know I can do that in front of a technical crowd. It gets a laugh every time. Actually, I love marketing people. That's it. Problem solved. Just use data. Mic drop. Good night. Well, all right. Yeah, that's not exactly the panacea either. This is what you call one of those good news, bad news situations. Okay. First, the good news. Let's start with the good news. The good news. Collecting lots of interesting data that's potentially relevant has never been easier. We live in an age where we can collect basically all the data we need on just about any problem we want. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. I know it's not true for every problem set, but we're certainly much better than it used to be even 10 years ago. Well, but there's bad news. Bad news is it's never been easier to collect all the data you could ever want on a problem. We're drowning in our data. And it's only going to get worse. So I don't like to predict the future because I'm bad at it. Otherwise, I'd be on Wall Street and retired. So, but there are a couple of things I feel safe saying. Two things, in fact, I think you can take to the bank. Thing number one, ready? There will be more people in the world next year than there are this year. I think we all feel pretty good about that. Number two, there'll be more data per person next year. And actually, more concretely, more explicitly, there'll be more streams of data per person. When I was a kid, I'm 45. When I was a kid, there were very few streams of data. Maybe there was some hospital medical records. There's whatever, was in sort of social security records. Very small number. And then we got a PC. Okay, now more streams of data. And then I went to work, and now a company has data. And then I got a PC on my desktop. And then I got phones and a connected TV and iPads and so forth, and on and on and on and on. And so the number of streams of data per person is growing every year. The number of people is growing every year. And you can tell this is a Cartesian cross-product problem because the value is in interconnecting the streams. And so we are drowning in the data. And the hard part is not collecting the data, it's knowing which data to use and why, and to reason your way through it. It's tough. So at Google, we have developed a technique that we use to try to sift our way through this problem. And by the way, this gets worse, especially in emergency situations, right? Something's going wrong. You have to trust your gut, make a judgment call, a gut call, on how you're going to fix this thing. Your body dumps cortisol. You can't really think straight, and you essentially flip a coin in your head and hope it works out. There is a better way to do that, and this is the thing I want you to take away. So we have a mental tool we use at Google called the Aero Budget. Okay, and this concept calms everybody down, and it works so well that we embrace this for practically everything, and it has made most things simpler. It's made nothing more complicated and made practically everything it touched much simpler. And if you embrace this, actually I'm going to make a more robust argument, not that you ought to embrace it, that if you don't embrace it, I'll make this argument by the time we're done, you're actually, you're well on the road to failure if you don't embrace this or something very much like it. I know that sounds scary. So the basic concept is pretty simple. Any goal that ends in the value of 100% is unachievable. You're not going to get 100% customer satisfaction, 100% uptime, 100% completion rate, 100% accuracy, 100%, 100%, 100%. Those don't exist. But the only thing 100% guarantees you is 100% failure. You guys are in the health profession, so you know pacemakers aren't 100% reliable. I don't mean that some pacemakers fail. This is true. I mean a perfectly working and functioning pacemaker is not 100% reliable. It's not catching every missed beat, and it doesn't matter because patients don't die. That you need to embrace the difference between 100% and what you actually need and treat it as a budget. I got a couple of principles I want to go over for that. All right. So, yeah. All right, well, principle number one, a target of 100% only pretty much guarantees 100% failure and frustration. All right, so if you have goals that are 100% something, you need to really rethink them. Well, first ask yourself if over any interesting length of period you've ever achieved it. I don't mean a day or a week or even a month, but like over the course of a year or 2 years, have you achieved that goal? If you have, you better look carefully at your measurement because I'm going to bet you haven't. And I think most of you probably haven't. And then you should ask yourself, well, what would have been a more reasonable goal? I'm going to argue this. No human has ever engineered a system ever in the history of humanity that has been 100% reliable. No engineered system ever by humans. Anyone want to argue with me? Okay, cool. I'll go push it a little further. I'm going to get argued with this one. I can't wait though. There's no such thing as a 100% reliable system in nature. Don't say the sun. Even if you want to think of the roughly half a day that the Earth does not face the sun, right? The sun's not 100% reliable. Ask anyone who's ever tried to bet on solar. But even if you want to count the half a day, give or take, that we are not facing the sun as a planned outage, working as intended, we have these network partitions that are unpredicted. They are called clouds. So there really is nothing, even in nature, that is 100% reliable. A lot of nines in some cases, but not 100% reliable. I'll take an argument. Someone wants to argue there's a natural process that's 100% reliable. I don't know. Is that true? I can conceive of a failure condition where that might not be true. But I mean, like we know that when genes copy, it's not 100% reliable, right? Telomeres and cancer, and so these things are very, very reliable and they're very robust, but they're not 100%. So you should, if you are not going to beat God, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Don't try. If you embrace the idea that you shouldn't try for 100% success of a thing and treat the gap as a budget, we're going to talk about right now what that means, your life will get a lot easier. Your stress will go down and your success rate will actually go up. Here is a counterintuitive thing for people. You have a system, maybe you thought it had to be up 100% of the time. You decide, oh gosh, that Rensin guy's probably maybe right. It's been very frustrating. The best we can ever do is, I don't know, 99% of the time. We can seem to pretty consistently have it up and running 99% of the time, whatever this process happens to be. Users mostly don't scream at me when it's up 99% of the time. That's going to be our goal. Fine. You might think to yourself, well, sure, I shouldn't have 100% as, I shouldn't expect 100%, but I can try for it, right? I mean, 99.5 is better than 99, and 99.9 is better than 99.5, right? Wrong. Wrong. If you are consistently underusing your error budget, if you are underusing your budget for failure, you are wasting time. The effort you are putting in to over-engineering a success metric past the point where your users or your business cares is wasted time that you can never reclaim. As far as we know, so far, time only moves in one direction. Right? There are two things you can never reclaim in a business ever, ever, ever in the history of ever. Time, a moment wasted is a moment gone. Data, piece of data lost is a piece of data gone. Everything else you can recover. You can make more money. You can earn new customers. Yes, you can even earn back a tarnished reputation. It's hard. You really don't want to be in that position, but you can do it. United Airlines will not fail because of this. I don't know, maybe some other thing. And you can't afford to waste that time because there's somebody behind you whose name you don't know who's chasing you, right? Maybe they're in Silicon Valley, maybe there's some other place, but you don't know their names, and they're going to show up one day, and when they do show up, it's going to feel like it's too late because they spent that budget that you didn't spend catching up to you, right? So underspending your errors is as bad a sin as committing too many errors in an error budget. All right, that seems scary. I want to talk about how we apply this. Let's put this in a concrete term. I want to talk about two situations. One a technical situation and one a non-technical situation. Let's talk about the technical one. So we use this concept in Google. And the way we do this is the relationship between SREs, the people, the developers who care about operations, who are in charge of making sure the thing is available and reliable, and the other developers, the ones who are worried about other product features, the UX or whatever, UI. And the way we do it is in the conventional way, you'd have an operations team who would fight with the developer team. In this case, we change the relationship. We say, stop. This product, this service has an error budget. It needs to have an availability of 99.9%, 3 nines. That is, if you're doing the math at home, it can be unavailable. It has a budget of 43.2 minutes of unavailability in a 30-day month. That's what 3 nines is. 4 nines, 4.32 minutes. 5 nines, 26 seconds. All right, so let's say it's a 3-9 system. Developers, feature developers, you have a budget of 43.2 minutes in a 30-day month that you can be, your system can be unavailable to the users, and that's okay. Like, you're allowed to play with that budget. Here's the new rule. You can do anything you want. That's the new rule. Congratulations. Wait, what? Yeah, all those acceptance tests are gone. Wait, what? Yep, new rule. You can do anything you want as long as you don't blow consistently your 43.2 minutes. When you start blowing your 43.2 minutes, on the other hand, all of the new feature engineering stops for a period of time till we earn the good minutes back. Here's what I mean. If you have a 3-9 availability, so you have a 43.2 minute budget, say you have a 96-minute outage, right? You've just burned double your budget. You've got to make back 43.2 minutes. What that means is you're going to do a feature freeze for 30 days. That's how that math is going to work. Then you're going to earn back, as long as you don't crash again, right, because you have some latent bug, you're going to earn back your 43.2 minutes. You'll pay back your debt. It's like credit card debt. And for that period of time, developers, that you are in a freeze, you're not going to stop engineering. You don't just play foosball. We're going to have a burn. This is where we pay down reliability technical debt. We, the SREs, we have a list of stuff that we want to build with you. We are also software engineers. And we're going to work on those things. And those are the only things we're going to work on. And then when you unfreeze, we're going to start rolling these out along with your new features. And what happens is it aligns everyone's incentives. Your traditional operations teams don't have to argue with developers anymore about, is this going to go, is this not going to go? No, it's math. Like, there's no argument. The developers don't have to yell at the operations people for being obstructionists or for throwing up a new roadblock or whatever, because it's math. We just measure it. You're either in the budget or you aren't. When you aren't in the budget after you have fixed, after you've mitigated whatever the outage is, now you know how much you have to pay back. And then you're going to spend that time on reliability. And what you find very quickly after the first couple of times any dev team goes through freeze is they start treating reliability the way it ought to be treated, which is a first-class feature of the system. Just like any other, autocomplete or data accuracy or any other darn thing. And they start engineering it in from the beginning. Now they go faster, right? Because the outages get smaller, they get less frequent, get easier to remediate, so you're burning less error budget. Neat little fact, when you drive your outage time asymptotically to 0, that is to say when you drive your MTTD, your mean time to detect, your mean time MTTR, your mean time to repair, when you drive them towards 0, you are burning, even over a lot of events, a very small amount of your error budget. The level of risk you can take goes up. If you can detect a problem, roll it back in a couple of seconds, you can be practically reckless with the experiments that you run in your system. That's how the math works, right? So suddenly, the operations people and the developers all have the same set of incentives and are working in the same direction. You find the developers consulting with the SREs about how to build reliability and right in the beginning of the design. It's not a fight after the fact. And so things that are conventional in a company like having a separate QA team often, not always, but often disappear. Don't need it anymore. The developers take responsibility for their own QA because they have an incentive to make sure they don't blow their error budget, right? And that's a very technical example. Let me give you a less technical example, because an error budget is a wonderful tool to use to align teams who are generally fighting with each other because one team is worried about risk and one team is worried about speed, right? It's how we align those teams. So when I got to Google, my first job was to run support. And we have a rule. We're a publicly traded company like you, a lot of people, reputation, we care about it. And the rule was all public utterances have to go through lawyers and PR, right? So we're recording this in the live stream. Hi, live stream. And they tell me that they want to post it to YouTube, but before it gets to go to YouTube, it's going to go to a Google PR human who's going to look at it, make sure I didn't say something stupid, and then it gets to go to YouTube. Okay, so I got there. That was the rule. That was fine. Posting information to a public status dashboard about the health of the cloud platform is a public utterance and had to go through lawyers. Uh-oh. You know who doesn't like to carry pagers and go on call? Lawyers. So since we couldn't page lawyers at 2 in the morning when there was an incident, because incidents never happened at 2 in the afternoon, so it was 2 in the morning. What happened was before I got there, they had this canned set of language you could use, which I didn't like. To me, it was like the best term I have for it is like cop speak. You ever see like the local sheriff get interviewed, and instead of saying, yeah, we saw the bad guy leaving the window after he broke in the house, it's always, we observed the perpetrator egressing the building through the glass-covered orifice in the front lawn area. He was transiting with the guy was carrying the stereo out the window. That's how we caught him. That's how people want to be spoken to one another. I call it like cop speak. It's this weird passive voice stuff. That's kind of what the messages were, and big shock, our customers hated that. That was awful. So I said, you know what, we're going to implement an error budget and support. Got with the lawyers and support people. He said, what does that mean? I said, all right, lawyers, here's what we're going to do. You're not going to get paged anymore. The support people can write anything they think needs to be written publicly. The lawyers were, hold on, wait, hold on, have less of a heart attack. You can look at it the next day during business hours, okay? If you really hate it, we'll change it or whatever, that's fine. And we're gonna have an error budget. Like you can grade it. No, that's bad, that's gonna count against your error budget. Ding, you can't say that. And if we find over the course of 30 days or something, the support people are blowing their error budget, they are saying bad things or whatever, we turn the screws, we turn the knobs a little bit and put more restrictions on what they could say. And then I went to the support people, right, it was my team, and I said, good news, you can say anything you want subject to 3 simple restrictions. Number 1, you may not expose the name of an internal system whose name has not already been exposed. So I'll give you an example because this has been exposed. We have the globally distributed lock system at Google called Chubby, but we have other systems that are related to it. So you can't say, there was a rise in errors in Chubby that caused this downstream problem if you can't guarantee in your brain that we have exposed that term publicly. What you're better off saying is, our globally distributed lock system experienced a spike in errors which caused this cascading thing. Okay, so that's rule number 1. No internal systems names. Rule number 2, no humans names. If Fred kicked over the network cable, you cannot say Fred kicked over the network cable. You can absolutely say a data center technician accidentally disconnected a network cable, if that's the truth, or kicked over a fiber cable, broke it with a backhoe, or ate it with a shark, or whatever. That's all. I got great video of a shark eating a fiber cable. I'm kidding. Actually, it's on YouTube. So, all right, no internal systems names, no humans names, and no PII, no personally identifiable information. Company Foo reported this error to us. Like, that doesn't get to go on the public status dashboard. But other than that, you can say anything you want. Just describe it, be honest, talk to people like they're humans. Like they're your friends, like explain it like you'd explain to your friend who was calling you for personal help. And I was like, oh, that sounds a little weird. I'm like, we got an error budget, it's fine, we're gonna try this little experiment. And they did. They never blew the error budget. Actually, they were a lot under it sometimes. We'll talk about that too. But and our CSAT, customer satisfaction, jumped a lot. I think in 4 months, the CSAT for support jumped 21 points, right? Because customers felt like they were talking to a vacuum. They felt like they were being patronized, right? And not because we were trying to be patronizing to them. It's just we were trying to adhere to the rules. Well, the rules were kind of dumb. So we made new rules, right? So that's a case with the error budget. Now, when we got into the situation, about a year into it, where we were drastically underspending our error budget. We'd go months between lawyers going, I didn't love that. Like, I'd have said that differently. And so my answer to the support people was, we need to take more risk. And they're like, you mean we have to expose more details? Well, maybe that's not the right thing to do. Like, maybe you've exposed the correct level of detail. How about writing an AI that automatically posts the message? Right? It's bound to get some stuff wrong while we're training it. That's a way to spend the error budget. Well, remember, the goal here is to automate your way out of a job, right? You want to live in a world where the machine works for you, not where you work for the machine. I have a colleague who likes to say, it's bad business to feed the machines with the blood of humans. And he's right. And so we did things like that, actually, and we do have some AI. Now, this wasn't on my team. This was on a different support team. Brian Mikowski, who was an awesome engineer, wrote an AI, which he called Emily Gage, which for the last couple of years has been the most consistently highest rated support agent in G Suite. Not because everyone else isn't good, it's just because she's really, the data's really good at figuring out what the deal is. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, so you can apply error budgets to practically any business situation where you have to trade between risk and speed. And then you get the 2 warring tribes on the same page, working with the same set of incentives, right? You loosen the chains for one group, but you also give more control to another group when you hit a failure mode. Right, everyone got that general concept? I see a fair amount of head nodding. The camera looks like it understands it. We're good. If you do this right, you don't even necessarily have to add reliability as a new top-line measure, a new MBO for your business. You can infer your reliability by watching your speed. If you see that your speed has dropped off a cliff, that's a pretty good signal. If you're observing error budgets, it's because your reliability has not been great. Conversely, if you're not presently measuring speed, you can infer your speed from your reliability. Right? If you see that your reliability is consistently very high, at a minimum, it's a signal you should go faster. And it ought to be a signal that you are going. And then if you see it dip a little bit, but not terribly under, right? Then that's a signal that you really are starting to speed up. So it's like you don't even have to add a lot of new measures to your top line business, but you do have to connect your business requirements to these things. All right, here's my last slide. Then we're going to do Q&A because I promised I'd leave some time. This is not some management theory, right? This really works, and it works at scale. Actually, that number is 8 now, not 7. Right? We go Google. We have 8 products, including Google Cloud, with 1 billion or more daily active users, and we're getting ready to announce a few more. We need on our latest financial release. So today is July 20th, 2017. So whatever the release was before that, people watching on YouTube can go back and look. With like 25% year-over-year financial growth. And overall, the trend lines for all of these products and other things is both the reliability and the feature velocity have been going up and to the right. They've been working in lockstep because now they reinforce one another. So there's a lot to SRE. If you have the SRE book, you ought to read it. If you don't, you ought to read at least the first section. Actually, you can get it online now, free. We released it. We open sourced it. If you go to landing.google.com/SRE, you can read the SRE book online. If you're not interested in the particular nuts and bolts, at least read the first section on basic principles because it talks about how to trade between these things. So this is my one little preachy message for this afternoon. Like if there's one bit for you to take away, it's this. It's that Aero budgets are your friend. And if you embrace them and embrace them fully, your life gets easier. You will stop wasting time. And more importantly, your escalations will go more smoothly because you'll come to some VP or senior VP who has to decide between a thing. It's usually a trade between risk and speed. That's the most common trade in businesses. And he or she will have a tool they can use to reason about a choice to make. It also makes it easier for you to know what the right thing to do is when hard decisions have to get made. You don't have to dump the cortisol. Like you've got a mental framework to use to make a hard choice. Okay, that is, and we've been doing this for like 18 years, and for us it works. And my team's job is to train companies like yours how to do this. That's our goal. And by the way, not because we're super nice people. I like to think we're super nice people, but that's not it. Like, we're not a nonprofit. Because the more this is understood in the world, the more reliable things people will bring to our platforms, which means the less brittle you'll feel when we have minor hiccups in our platforms, right? You'll tolerate them much better. It means the faster we can go. And that, at the end of the day, since we're an engineering culture, that's the thing we want to do, is go fast. Okay, that is the end of my prepared remarks. I apologize. I went a few minutes past what I had promised, so I'm a little over my budget. But I think we have about 20 minutes for questions. I don't know. I know people on the live stream, if you've emailed Chad Todd, and I know there's a microphone floating around, or you can yell very, very loud, and I can repeat the question. Yep. Oh, there's a mic, yeah.
Do your unused minutes roll over, or how do you handle that?
Do your unused minutes roll over? I'm sorry. No. The way we've tried a lot of things. We've tried monthly, we've tried quarterly, we've tried a bunch of things. Actually, date boundaries tend not to work in Aero budgets. We use a rolling 30-day window. No, you don't accrue them like vacation time or cell phone minutes. Sorry. Well, because if you think about it, you're not actually recovering time. Like a moment lost is a moment lost. And you should feel that pain because if they rolled over, you wouldn't feel the pain of having lost an opportunity for innovation. So actually, you kind of don't want to. You're missing half of the equation if you do. That's a good question. Thanks. Other questions? Yes.
Yeah. How do you reconcile implementing an Aero budget in like heavily regulated kind of areas? Because especially in healthcare IT, it's not only that our users are not developers; they're also like able to, give us legal repercussions for not fulfilling technical debt.
Is your regulatory environment demand that you be perfect all the time? No, it can't. It's impossible. Stop. It's impossible. No, that's not true. Look, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not going to sit here and preach about healthcare regulation because I don't have any expertise on the subject. But regulatory regimes are there to enforce rules amongst humans, and humans are not perfect. They aren't, right? And you have an Aero budget even within your regulatory regime. It might be very small. It might be akin to 7 nines or 8 nines, but it's not 0. If it were 0, there would never be any experimentation, right? And so you already live within an Aero budget. Your lawyers are already making assessments of risk. Publicly traded companies, you make these assessments. Your accountants make assessments of risk all the time when they figure out what to allocate where on your balance sheet. Like, those are value judgments. All I'm saying here is you should recognize that it's a budget, be unafraid to spend it, and be explicit about the choices. Stop relying on intuition to use it. Life gets simpler when you do it. But yeah, I would argue that even in a heavily regulated regime, you have a non-zero error budget. Discover it, know what it is, learn to live within it, manage it appropriately. Yes, down here. Wow, you are going to get your steps in today, Chad.
I know.
For some of the more subjective error budgets that you have, like the one you mentioned with your legal group, how do you count things? Is it cumbersome to count them and keep track of those, or do you have an approach that makes it easy and so that you don't spend more time counting things than doing the work?
I know the answer to this question. I'm trying to phrase the words correctly in my brain. Okay, it's all relative. In the beginning, we had unhappy customers, and we would periodically yell at lawyers, and they don't like to be yelled at, right? So that hurts. But that was better than being on call 24/7, right? So they accepted the pain of yelling, trading it against being on call. In the new deal, there's still a little bit of toil they have to do. They have to come the next day and read the things and, +1 or -1, good or bad. But that's less painful than being yelled at, right? They have asked if we can build sentiment analysis systems to do the work for them. In some cases, they push it downstream to legal assistants and paralegals. That's up to them about how they choose to keep the team honest. I agree, for subjective kinds of things, it's harder. Content's tough, words and sentiment are tough to do that way. But even if you only get that far, it's still a drastic improvement for both customers. A good analogy, I guess, would be if my goal is to lose 50 pounds, and I eat well, and I go to the gym, and I work out, and I do the thing, and I only lose 20 pounds, yeah, I haven't lost 50 pounds, but I'm still 20 pounds better than I was. It's kind of the same thing, right? So the life is still better, and then you're making this trade. Is it worth thinking about new process and investing engineering to recover whatever that little bit of work is for them or not? It's not very much work. We don't have, thank God, tons of incidents, where we need to post to the public dashboard, and so there's not a lot of work to do, and the customers are happier. So I think we probably will wind up stopping there. But you do have to make a conscious decision, is there a further optimization we can do, and is it worth spending the effort to try to devise it? But she had a question. She was right there next to him. You're going all the way there. You're really trying to get his steps in.
Trying to get steps in.
So how would you reconcile a feature freeze if there's obligations to meet? If you know that this feature has to be released by this date, and you don't have time to freeze it, else you're going to get financial problems, regulatory problems.
This is the super important feature, and it's got to be released by Sooner Day 2017, or else what?
Right, all our features.
No, so hold on. Now, so...
Well, last year there was a big push for MU3, right? So we had to meet these, our service had to do these things that the government outlined. And if we didn't get them out, hospitals would face financial repercussions, and then it wouldn't look good for us either.
Okay, then you have to decide what you're going to cut. Then you have to make an explicit decision you're going to ship a less reliable platform in order to meet that date. That's a business decision. You get to choose to do that if you're facing an existential, some kind of externality like that. You get to make that decision. I have worked on teams where we had some large public event where we had to say that a thing was GA, and it meant we were going to explicitly make the choice of sacrificing reliability of some other part of the thing. But make it a choice. Don't let entropy win. Be explicit about it, record the choice, and have a plan for paying it back, right? And having to meet a fixed date and override a feature freeze for the sake of something like that should be expensive. Meaning, okay, you can override the freeze on the reliability freeze because of the feature for this event. That's fine, but we're gonna immediately go back into a freeze, and we're gonna, double the time frame. That's the payment the tax you pay for exercising this exemption. Because you got to pay this down. We have to stop treating reliability like it is different than any other feature. It's a feature of a system, and it is the most important feature of a system. If it isn't reliable, people won't use it, and if people don't use it, it's worthless. And if autocomplete is 90% okay, or not even in the system, but the thing is reliable, you'll get more users than if it is unbelievably shaky, but the one time out of 12 that it works, it's got a great result. That's the fallacy we tend to fall into. But if you really get it, like, that's a way to trade against that, is you make an explicit business decision that we're going to pay a tax for it. Okay, we're going to break this rule for this, and it's a violation of the policy. We're going to carry that on our books by immediately going back into the feature freeze and extending it by X to make it painful to have to make this decision, that same decision, the next time. That's the discipline of adhering to this. Yeah.
When you guys calculate whether or not you've gone over or under your error budget, do you give more weight to whether, I guess, the severity of the error, or is it just all sort of equal?
No, we don't do that. When we calculate SLO, service level objectives, there's almost never just one. You know, the most common ones are an availability, right? The user wants to get it and can get at it. Latency, how long does it take them to get the result? An error rate, how many times when they ask for a thing do they get a correct answer or not an error? Those are the three most, that's kind of the golden triangle. We calculate SLOs based on those things. Sometimes for different services, and then we try to roll it into one overall SLO for the service. There you might monkey with the weights. You might say that availability is more important than latency, or error rate is the most important thing. So it might all be 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. That's a business judgment. But no, where you capture the severity is how it impacted the particular SLO. So if your error rate was elevated for 27 minutes, so you chewed 27 minutes of the error budget related to your errors, related to your error SLO, that's pretty severe, right? So that would be how, like, a P0 is not more important than a P1. Like, if you're out of SLO, you're out of SLO. It's binary. Otherwise, you know, if you leave it to value judgments, then people are going to play politics with it. Like, they're going to make arguments. Everyone's going to be a lawyer at that point. You've been waiting. Yes, young lady.
So kind of to the same vein of putting things in production a lot faster than expected if you're in a freeze, and with the error allocation, are there certain expectations or things that dev teams have to abide by, or kind of expectations prior to taking it to production, as opposed to just the error budget?
Well, so yes, but those will emerge organically for you. So I'm going to tell you what will happen, right? In the beginning, you will say there's the error budget and only the error budget, and that's it. That's the only rule. Look how simple life is. And then teams will start to blow the error budget. And then teams will start to impose upon themselves bits of process to try to avoid blowing the error budget. They'll say, we should really invest more time in the part of the system that checks configurations before we deploy them. Or we should go through a launch review process. Like, they will start organically recreating but the difference is it will not have been forced on them by some external operations team. So there's no war, right? A team has made a reasoned decision that they can optimize their velocity by introducing a tiny bit more process or a tiny bit more design or whatever it happens to be. That grows organically out of observing the error budget. But yes, that will come, guaranteed.
Hi. Hi. Can you talk more about when a team exceeds the budget, what exactly are they paying? Like, as in a time to develop things with SRE? Can you talk more about it?
Sorry, I missed the last part.
So when the team blows the budget,
Yeah.
what are they doing? The freeze is there.
Oh,
they're
great.
not working on the product, but they're helping SRE. So can you shed more light with what they're helping with?
Yeah, sure. So, all right, let's say a team, development team does a thing, and they have a latent bug that allows a bad user input to crash the system. A query of death, we might call it, right? A certain query that crashes the system. All right, well, you got to fix the bug because you got to bring the system back up, right? And they burn through the error budget. All right, let's do our math a little bit easy. Let's say it's a 4.9 system, so it can have 4.32 minutes of unavailability in a 30-day month, and they have a 9-minute outage. Okay, well, they're going to be frozen for a month because they have to earn those minutes back, assuming they don't have another outage organically, right? The feature frozen. What are they going to do? for a month. Well, the SREs, who are concerned about one feature, reliability, have a stack rank of things, right? We don't like to let the developers sit idle. Have a stack rank of things that they're going to want the developers to engineer for the next release after the freeze lifts, which includes like putting more sanity checking around edge cases, doing an optimistic estimate of impact on load of a query and doing load shedding or deferrals to a cache, like those kinds of things that would tend to create resiliency. If it was a latent bug that the reason the outage lasted so long was because it was slow to discover the root cause. They'll spend a lot of time putting more telemetry, more logging and debugging thing. They might invest more time in the CI/CD thing so that as soon as the thing is detected, they can automatically roll back to a previously known good, item put and rollback, go back to a previously known good version, right? Anything that lowers the amount of time it takes to detect the problem and remediate it automatically, right? If you don't have humans, it can go faster. Those are the kinds of things, and they'll work on them together, right? And they'll burn down kind of the reliability backlog. And what will happen at the end of the day is when the new shiny features start to go out, more of the problems will be caught before they ship, and the ones that aren't caught will be caught quicker in production, in the canary or in traffic split or whatever. The ones that aren't caught there will get caught quicker in regular production, and they'll get rolled back faster, right? And you'll want every new incident, the blast radius will shrink. I'm an analogy person, is in the beginning of a thing, it's all boulders, which is to say you don't have a lot of incidents, but when they happen, they hit everybody and they hurt. And eventually they become rocks, and eventually they become pebbles, and eventually they become sand, right? And so in a heavily mutating system, a system with a lot of new features and a lot of growing users, you will always have a certain background radiation of error. That's the error budget, right? But it's like sand, right? Each grain, not so much. The blast radius is pretty small. I mean, a beach weighs a lot, but an individual piece of sand, not so much. So that's where you're going to spend that time. And it makes everybody partners, because the smart dev teams say to their SRE partners, could you sanity check this new thing for me before we actually go build it, please, and make sure we've covered all the reliability stuff? Or would you agree to look this over before we ship it for production? And those are the teams that wind up going fast. But again, they learn that themselves, and that becomes very organic, bottom-up behavior.
Okay, so I got a question here. So, right here.
Oh, thanks. Where's this coming from?
So it makes logical sense to me, and like you said, it's not theory; it works. I've drunk the Kool-Aid, but how do I go get that first step to go start this experiment off before it goes and starts really producing results?
Okay, so
what's that first step?
Pick a system first. One. Pick some production system that's important enough that if the experiment succeeds, people will pay attention to it. Decide you're going to adhere that, and get agreement between the engineering team that's building the system and whoever is responsible for operating it. We haven't talked about how you compose an SRE team, but okay. Try to get some agreement among the stakeholders. If you can't get agreement among the stakeholders, go to the person where they meet. Like that's someplace, might be the CEO, but that's someplace in your organization, right? And convince that person. By the way, you almost never have to do that. People tend to see this, look at the data and go, right, if I do this, eventually I get to go faster with fewer steps. I'm in, sign me up. Or I get to not have to argue with this person about a choice he's made. Sign me up, I'm in, right? So it's not usually hard to find the first volunteer. My advice is pick a system that is small enough that you can get your arms around it and really explore all of its details, but important enough that it's not some throwaway thing. Don't pick a dev test system. Like pick a thing that's in production, right? And then walk this process. But that's where you would kind of start. That's part of what my team. That's actually the process my team follows, right? As we come to a company like yours, you tell us this is the system we want to do, and then we start at zero with you. How would you implement SRE around this system? What is its actual performance? What should its SLOs be? How does that tie to the business? Do you have monitoring that can prove it? What are your rollbacks? It's many months of engagement. And then you have your exemplar, and you've got 5 or 10 or maybe 20 people who have lived the exercise, walked the journey, that can go teach everybody else. And it tends to spread very, very quickly in organizations. And by the way, a thing I discovered, was contrary to my expectation, happily, is the most enthusiastic embracers of SRE generally and definitely Aero Budgets. The larger the enterprise, the more enthusiastic they embrace this, not the other way around. It's actually not the little startups in Silicon Valley who embrace this and want to do it so much. Because it seems small and tractable, and they're all super smart, just ask them. And they all graduated Stanford, so they're geniuses, just ask them. But the large enterprises who have kind of this sense of that there's a lot to risk, they have this nagging sense in their stomach that they're not going fast enough. You know, they can feel technology shifting underneath them. It was, you know, that sense there for those of you, not many by the looks of the crowd, who were in the industry when the web came along in the late 90s, mid 90s, right? You remember how that felt? It's like, ooh, this feels different. Or maybe when mobile came along sort of 10 years later, cloud now is starting to do that. You know that feeling in your stomach like, ooh, things are starting to change underneath me. So it turns out large enterprises with a lot to lose, publicly traded companies, they tend to be the ones who are most enthusiastic. I'll tell you the interesting, the thing that happens all the time. I'll go talk to a CEO or CTO someplace and I'll explain it and say, she'll look at me and she'll say, that's awesome, I absolutely want to do that, but I don't know if our developers can do that. And I'll say, well, that's nonsense. You have a perfectly good going concern. You build software now. Your developers are going to absolutely have the skills. It's not going to be the thing. There's nothing magical about a Google SRE. We don't genetically engineer them, as far as I know. Like we hire them all from outside, just like you do. It's all good. And then they'll say, well, I don't know if the development managers are going to want to embrace this. Walk over to the development managers and the engineers and go, hey, how would you like to do this thing that is going to let you go faster and teach you a bunch of new skills that'll make you more valuable in the world? What would you think about that? And they'll go, yes, sign me up. I would love to do that, but good luck getting the executroids to let us do that. Huh. Well, this is one of those situations where you both want the same thing but aren't talking to each other. And pull them both into a room and say, tell them what you said, tell them what you said. And then all of a sudden there is harmony. And then it goes really fast at that point. So start with a system. I can talk to you offline about how to do that and pick one and get going. But that's the way to do it. That's the way we did it at Google, by the way. We didn't just say, this new day, we do this new thing. Thus we have commanded. And do one more? Sure, I'll do one more. That's up to the room. You want to do one more? You want to bookend it? Go for it.
Okay. So earlier you mentioned you didn't talk about how you staff an SRE team, and I think my question kind of speaks to that a little bit, because your answer to one of the earlier questions was the SRE would sit down with the engineering team with their list of things, or might even get called in earlier in the process to make sure the designs look good. Is there a magic ratio of SREs to engineers that you've found in your experience? Is it 1-to-1? Is it 1 to 5?
No.
Is it 1 to 100?
No. In fact, the whole thing breaks unless your SRE teams are scarce. Yeah. You need to be a scarce resource. I think it works best between like 10, 11, 12 to 1. That is to say, for every 100 developers, you have 10 maybe SREs. Staffing an SRE team, this is not complicated. Seriously, this is not rocket science. SREs are developers. They're developers. You hire them the same way you hire developers, right? The difference is you just hire, the profile is, like the lie in the industry is there are front-end developers, there are back-end developers, or there are database developers. No, actually, there's a whole other class of developer called the impatient developer. You all know them. Many of you might be them. I'm one. That's the one who, after the second or third time of doing a thing, says, screw it. I don't care how long it takes me. I'm going to write a tool that does this because I'm never doing that again. That was awful. You find that person, and you can do it in your pre-screen process, like a common phone screen question. I will ask candidates. These are regular engineering candidates who we are interviewing for normal software engineering, feature engineering jobs at Google. I'll say, hey, tell me about the last time you got exasperated at a process and wrote a tool to just do it for you. And tell me how many times you had to do the process before you got annoyed enough to write the tool. And the candidate goes, well, I'll have to go back a few years. Yeah, okay, you're not going to work for SRE. You're not impatient enough. And so then the candidate goes, well, last week, okay, great. Please say less than 3 times, 3 or 4 times, just a handful of times. I think I did it like twice or 3 times before I said, I don't care if it takes me 100 hours to write this tool. I'm never doing that again. Come on. Let's have a talk. Like, we're going to explain this SRE thing to you and why this might be a kind of software engineering you want to do. I tell people, do not bootstrap your SRE team by hiring external engineers. What? No, don't do that. Go find existing software engineers you have that are already building systems you're going to have to maintain and are really familiar with them, who also are driven by the idea of making the machines make the system more reliable. And your first 5 or 10 SREs should come from that pool. Like if you've got, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands, probably, of software engineers at Cerner. I don't know, but I know generally how big the company is, so we're in the thousands, I'm certain. I guarantee you can find a dozen who want to do this work and are enthusiastic to try it and learn these skills, and that becomes the nucleus of the team. That's a much faster way to bootstrap. And over time, this is always an uncomfortable thing to say, you're just going to stop hiring traditional systems administrators. That's just not going to be a thing anymore. And so the obvious question people ask is, what do I do with my systems administrators? The answer is you want to be thoughtful and considerate and help up-level them. Like, if they have any programming experience, you want to reintroduce them into software development and give them those classes and help them get those skills so they can get the satisfaction of what that's like. And a few of them will raise their hands and say, I didn't sign up to be a software engineer, and then they will have to find something else to do. Because that job you can't continue to grow and that job continue to exist that way. It's just the way the business physics work. It's uncomfortable, but if you're thoughtful and caring with your employees, I've been through this transition a couple times now at Google, because once upon a time in early days, we did have some sysadmins. You can make this transition. It is possible to do. I'm out of time. Thank you all very much. It's been lovely to speak to you this afternoon.